Hello and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever, episode 169. And we're going to get into a lot of Fire Emblem stuff today. I've got a ranking for you of all of the games. I've got another ranking of the characters of Path of Radiance being added to my character ranking that I did a few months ago. And I want to give a few quick thoughts on Path of Radiance since I beat it a few weeks ago. Before we do that, let's get into pickups. Alright, going phone for these just because of convenience, but I got the Resident Evil Requiem Deluxe Edition with the Steelbook. Apparently these were limited in number per console, so I didn't know that. There's not much else to it beyond the disc and the slip that had all the DLC that I already redeemed, so happy to have Requiem. I've been enjoying it so far. I'll have more thoughts when I get back from hiatus. I also got my framed print of the Super Metroid art piece that I mentioned an episode or two back. Very happy to have it. I put it under the Metroid Zero mission. Seems appropriate. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. I've had a bit of a tumultuous relationship with this game. I had it on the GameCube. When it came out, I got stuck on the ship map with Jill's introduction 3 times. Never got past it. So I eventually sold it. Came to regret that when the game never got a re-release of any kind for 20 plus years. Ended up reacquiring it about 2 years ago from a friend who needed to make some funds happen. Was happy to help in that regard. And then it came out on the GameCube Classics Nintendo Switch Online app. So that's how I replayed it. And I gotta say, with a little bit of QOL built in thanks to Nintendo Switch Online having save states, I was able to get past that particular mission and see the game to its end for the first time, which was really nice. I won't really say where the game ultimately landed until we get to the franchise ranking a little bit later in this video. But I will say that I had an overall positive experience. I feel that the story and the cast, at least the main cast, is pretty solid. Ike is a definite favorite in terms of protagonists in the series. I really like how he approaches things and just cuts right to the heart of the matter when it comes to nobility and tradition. Just doesn't have patience for that, and I really like that about him. I think that some of the supporting cast is really good. I wish there was more opportunity for the minor playable characters to talk. They kind of just show up in their chapter, have a couple lines, and then they get supports and maybe an occasional story beat in the future, but typically no. They just kind of join the army and they're silent for most of it. The music's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's my favorite in the series, but it works for the game. I like it. The cinematics have aged a bit, but they definitely set the standard for the series to come, and they're still pretty impressive for the time. The visuals themselves are not. Those have not aged well, especially the combat animations. When you compare those to the Game Boy Advance sprite work, it's like night and day, honestly. They were learning how to do 3D with Path of Radiance, and it shows. So I'm not going to hold that against the game, but it does put a little bit of a damper on the enjoyment of watching the units actually fight when it's kind of awkward and stilted. I do like the character designs a lot. I think that they're very well done. Some of them are up there with my favorites in the series in terms of just aesthetics and vibe. The combat moment to moment I think is pretty good. The maps are solid. There's some pretty ingenious maps in this game. There's some really devious ones in this game too. That canyon side one with all the rocks, didn't like that one. And I think overall it's definitely among the best of the series once I got past that little hurdle of not just being able to get through that part. I tried to split my XP a little bit better. Ike tends to be a vacuum for it in this game, at least at the beginning. And then, at least with this run through, he kind of fell behind in contrast to like Mia, who was really like my MVP for most of the game. I think that it tackles some really good themes too. I think that it approaches the idea of bigotry and racism pretty well for a game made in early 2000s. And on the whole, I think that the overall messaging is really good about don't be an asshole. Work with people that may not look just like you do. Appreciate their culture. Appreciate what they bring to the world around them. Don't hate them because they're different. Accept them. I like that type of messaging. That really goes in with how I feel about a lot of things myself. So, it feels good to crush that sort of tyranny, especially in the current political environment we find ourselves. Anyway, I really enjoy Path of Radiance, and if you haven't played it yet and you're interested about the series, the GameCube Classic version is a great way to jump in. Save states help a lot with mediating some of the frustrations of early Fire Emblem, because there is no casual mode. There's an easy mode, but there is no casual mode where your units will come back if they get knocked out in a round. They will stick around in easy mode, but they won't be in your combat. They'll be in story stuff if they were in story things. So it also kind of ends supports for that character. So it's not really a great thing to pull off. I do have issues with it. I do think that the RNG is a little bit wild in this game. Really wild in this game. Mild spoilers. There's the final showdown between Ike and the Black Knight. I had to deliberately manipulate the RNG to pass it, despite having Ike at level 20, despite having Ike with the correct weapon equipped, despite having Mia at level 20 being able to support. It's really just RNG with that fight. And I pity everyone who had to sit through that in a normal context without being able to save state and basically optimize the hits to be in your favor. I feel for you. I hate that type of gameplay, and that's really the lowest point, I think, in Path of Radiance for me, is maybe his biometrics were off that day. Which I don't think is a great system to like make your units less effective because they're not in the mood. I don't like that. All right, let's move on to the second part of this video. All right, we are back with the every playable Fire Emblem character tier list. Now that I have completed Path of Radiance, I feel I can finally rank those characters appropriately instead of like the 10 or 12 that I did last time that I barely remembered anything about. So I pulled everyone out of this list that I had in here before, save one character, Shinon, because I'm still gonna shit on him. Yeah, he's still here. I still don't like him. Honestly, I think I'm looking at who he's around. That's still about right. I'm gonna level him up slightly for racism. So we've got all of these green characters here between Astrid and Xenark to rank, because I have interacted with all of them for the most part. Pretty excited to rank all of these characters. I think that Path of Radiance has a pretty solid cast with a few really, really good standouts with some great character growth. So I want to go ahead and just start with the S rank characters. So the 5 that I like the most, we'll just say. Because I think that sounds about right. Ike, of course, is going to be one of those. I think Ike is one of the best protagonists in a Fire Emblem, honestly. I was very impressed by the time I got through the game, how much I like Ike. I really do. I think Ike is around here, honestly. I think he is one of the best protagonists in the series, with Lynn and with Edelgard and Lucina up in that upper echelon of major characters. Just really well done. My favorite character overall, though, is not Ike, it's Mia. Mia was my MVP. She had the most kills in my last run. I love her design. I like her personality. And I think that she's just a great character all the way around. I was a little sad in the last 2 chapters or so that her speed was just not as high as I thought it was, because she was just dodging things all the time until those last 2 chapters, and then she just started getting smacked by things, and I was like, aw. Another great character that I really like is Jill. Jill is one of the characters that you can have go 2 ways. You can have her stay as a incredibly closed-minded racist, or you can completely redefine her brain and have her see the world and lose all of her bigotry. It's an incredible supporting character arc that I really, really liked. So I think that Jill, especially because you kind of have to work to keep her in your good graces, I think she's around here. Really, really great character. And one that can, like I said, go one of 2 ways. She can flip-flop back to the other squad if you recruit her, and then have her like talk to her dad. And it's like, oh, no. So I think that's just kind of a neat just character journey for her to really grow and develop. How do I say her name? Leith? I think it's Leith. Leith. I really like her character a lot too. I think she's around in the S tier, probably not quite as high as Tamara, but I think right here is a pretty good spot for her. I like her path as well. She's reluctant, but is trying to work with Ike and the other Bjork, overcoming her own prejudice. And that's a really big part of Path of Radiance, is just having characters overcome that prejudice on both sides. The last character that I think I'm going to consider for the top tier is Nafini. I really like her character design. She was almost in my top 5 units. She was like 7th or 8th. But I love her design, and I really like her character. I would probably put her around Byleth. She doesn't get a lot of chances to shine, and I went through 2 of her support paths. One I liked more than the other. But I think those are my S rank characters. For my A rank characters, I'm gonna go ahead and grab our princess, Alencia. That's how I'm saying it. I think she is a really good supporting character, and when she finally gets to be playable, I think that that's really nice. They could have just kept her on the sidelines, but they chose to do something different. I think she's around there. Astrid. Astrid is another MVP of mine. She was 4th or 5th on my list overall, but she doesn't have a lot of character development. She's just kind of there. As cool as she is, she was one of my favorite units. She just doesn't have a lot of character growth. So I'm going to put her about there. No, I think a little higher. I'm feeling a little higher. I would like her more if I had a chance to do a support with her. Because I don't think I did. Marcia. Marcia's actually one of my favorite Pegasus Knights in the whole series. I like her personality. She has some nice exchanges with Ike, and she thinks that she can get away with calling him handsome all the time. I like her confidence. I'm going to put her just a little under our princess there. Let's see. Titania. I love her design. I like her character too. She does get a chance to shine quite a bit. But in terms of like the master class representative as like this is your safe unit, I think she's one of the best in the whole series in terms of like at least being a character that you want to actually interact with. I'm gonna put her a little ahead of Diamant and Saber. Is that this guy's name? Yes. All right. From there, let's see. Who else would I put in that tier? I forgot his name. T-Barn. One of the best rulers, and you actually get to kind of play with him a little bit. So I like him quite a bit. I say he would be about there. Lucia, I didn't actually use a whole lot because she comes in kind of late, but I do like her visual design. I'm going to put her, I think there. And then I think I'm running out of A's. I'm not seeing too many other ones that are making me go A rank. Super rad A rank. Is it Runark? Runolf. There we go. Runolf. I like him too. I think he's a really nice supporting character as well. Not as strong as some of the others though. So I'm going to put him right there. All right, let's move into the B rank. B rank, Liliana, I want to like more than I do. I think she's a solid mage, but she doesn't really stand out in my playthrough. Like, she was good, and like the mage that I used outside of... I use Soren a bit too, but I like her a lot more, and she's got like this sleepy personality, which I think is kind of amusing. I'm gonna put her around there. One that I like, but not a favorite. I forgot this character's name because I barely used him, but I do like his design. Stefan, he can be in the B rank. I would put him about there. Ina, I didn't actually have her be playable in my run, so she was basically just a antagonist turned assistant on the sidelines, but I think she's a pretty good design. I would put her around there. Nasir, I'm going to put in kind of the same rank. He has a very interesting part to his story, so I like him a bit more than some other characters. I think Mist also is in the B. I would like her more if her design was a little bit better. I like her Valkyrie class look a lot. So I think she's actually probably my favorite out of the B ranks that we're going to be putting up there. I forget his name. Morum. I like him. I used him in a few maps. I think I would put him around there. Around there, yeah. I forget. The problem is I just have a hard time remembering names. Jonuf, I think, was a good Hawk unit. I liked him a fair amount. Probably a little bit more than Stefan. Rayson had a really interesting story arc. So I'm going to put him ahead of Ileana, but not by much. I think that Tanith is a cool character. She's probably the coolest looking of the Peg Knights in this game. But I didn't really use her because I already had Marcia so, like, maxed out. So I'm going to put her there. And I like Zanark. I wish he had a little bit more involvement because he's just kind of there. But when he is, he's kind of cool. Let's take a little break and put some more characters in the F tier. And unfortunately, I gotta put Devdan in the F tier because I feel like Nintendo's localizers just did him dirty. And with Radiant Dawn, they brought him back with a slightly different name and a completely different personality. I don't think he's as bad as Shion. I think he's just kind of down here. But I didn't like how they portrayed his character. He was kind of bad. Gatry gets to join the pervert club. When I originally ranked him, I forgot that all he cares about is women. So he gets to hang out with the other perverts. Because I just don't care for that archetype in Fire Emblem whatsoever. I don't think I have any other characters I would throw in the F tier. I do have quite a few I would throw in the D tier because they just don't do anything interesting or inspiring to stand out. This guy, Largo, I want to say. Yeah, he just kind of shows up and is like, I'm big, and I'm like, that. I'm happy for you. I don't care. I don't know anything about you. You could actually just kind of be in the bottom of the decent tier. Marcia's brother, Makalov, his whole thing is like, I am in debt all the time. And I think that other characters have done that better. Boyd. Boyd is a rival type character, but I feel like he just doesn't really live up to being a rival really at all. This guy, he's just like in a map, Toronto. He knew your father somehow, I think. I don't even remember his story. He was a Dane soldier that flips. He's just so generic that I don't even really have anything nice to say about him. But this is like characters I don't like, so I will put him a little bit higher. He's below Ash though. Rice, he's the first healer you have. He's fine, but I don't think he's that memorable really. Braum, he's like your first standard like tank character, but he's just like a peasant. That's basically his archetype altogether. Jeffrey, kind of the same deal. He's one of the retainers for the princess, but he's just kind of there. He's pretty much this guy, but in this game. This kid, like Tormod, he's in the desert. He's leading an anti-racist group out in the desert. But he kind of just falls out of the narrative after like that chapter. It's very disappointing. I forget his name. Volk, yes. Volk could be cool, but he's so like, I'm not gonna tell you anything in this game that he just kind of loses any interest, really. I am sad to do this, because I used to like Soren, but I forgot how racist he is. He can be kind of around with these characters. Because he is just a stuck-up racist for, like, most of the game. And I don't know if he ever, like, feels like he gets redeemed at all in the game. I feel like the rest of the cast can fall into the C tier. So, Bastion, is that your name? Yes. Bastion, like, he talks real highfalutin because he's a retainer. But I don't really have much of an opinion on him. Khalil had an interesting support with Nafini, but I don't really think that highly of her one way or another. I think she is less good than Anna, so I think I'll put her there. Totally fine. Who did I just move? No, I moved the Radiant Dawn equivalent. Sorry. Did not mean to do that. The fun of having the exact same characters in 2 games. This guy, he shows up like at the end. Grifka. He's kind of down here. I think that... No, that's about right. Har is Jill's instructor, but he's kind of like, I just want to sleep. So I feel like he's kind of more down here. Forget your name. Kyrian? He's really into his job. And that's kind of his archetype. So I'm going to put him around the other guy that's kind of similar, just older. Our Mordecai, our Lagoose friend, he just kind of doesn't have a strong personality one way or another, so he's just kind of in the middle. Oscar, he was in my team for a while. He kind of just fell off like a lot of the cavalry units tend to do. I'll put him there. Ralph was, like, I'm sure he's great, but he's just kind of like, I dropped using him real fast. Our flip-floppy Raven King, Nasala, I feel like he didn't get a chance to shine in terms of a redemption arc all that much. So I kind of feel he's like hanging out down here too. His game's Radiant Dawn. His game's Radiant Dawn, but I do think that his design is okay, so he can hang out around here. And last but not least is a character whose name I also forgot, Yoki. I don't think he's as interesting as his cohort, but I do think that he is one of the more interesting silent types in the series. So I think he's kind of between Hanako and Sakura. All right, well, that's this piece of this Fire Emblem trifecta. Let's now rank the entire series. Now that I've played Path of Radiance and played most of the ones that are North American releases. Here we are with the ranking of Fire Emblem as a franchise. And I have played most of the North American Fire Emblem releases. I have not played Fates, Conquest, or whatever the R1 is, Revelation. Mainly because Birthright really pissed me off. So, I've already ranked them. I just decided to go ahead and do that to make this a little bit faster. I don't think it's any real big surprise that Three Houses is on top and Shadow Dragon's on the bottom. If you followed my top-bottom lists, that makes a lot of sense. Fortune's Weave is sitting here in this coveted waiting to see spot. Because that is my most anticipated game for 2026. And I really hope that they take the best parts of Engage and the best parts of Three Houses and find a happy medium point that makes it the best of the series. I hope that they don't continue down the Engage path, but what I was seeing doesn't suggest that. Fingers crossed. let's briefly touch on these working from the bottom up to the top. Shadow Dragon is just a really poor remake of the original Famicom game. Ugly to look at. It basically took everything that was great about the GBA games and just didn't give a crap about the visual presentation anymore. It has great artwork, but that's really the only thing that I could compliment about Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. It's too stuck in the past compared to its contemporaries, and it's just not a good game. It almost killed the franchise, honestly. New Mystery of the Emblems remake didn't even come out in North America because Shadow Dragon bombed so hard. So it's the low point of the franchise for me. Fire Emblem Fates Birthright is a really, really big step back from Fire Emblem Awakening. It takes the core of what made Awakening interesting and fun and just completely expands upon it in all the wrong ways. It takes the like your descendants thing and just comes up with a bonkers way to shove that in here. Characters all kind of suck. The designs are probably my least favorite in the entire series. They're written really generically, comically anime. And I don't mean that in a good way. The gameplay might be a little bit stronger overall, but honestly, everything about Fates just rubs me the wrong way. Outside of Keita Nash's playthrough of it, which was one of the best ways to play through a game that you don't like, is to play it with friends and make fun of it the entire time. So Fates is the worst Fire Emblem I played that I have finished. Now, I'm being polite and not including DLC separately, because if I was, Fail Xenologue would be probably in this spot between Shadow Dragon and Fortune's Weave, because that is abysmal. But we'll get to that in a moment. I don't think Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light is a bad game. I just haven't played a lot of it, so I don't have a whole lot to say. At this stage, it's pretty simple in comparison to all of its forebears that have followed. It's great that it's available in English, and I'm looking forward to sitting down with it at some point and actually going through the campaign. But it hasn't happened yet, and I do like everything else that I played more than the one chapter I played of Shadow Dragon: The Blade of Light. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is also not a bad game. I just have hardly played it, so I don't have a super strong opinion of it yet. I've been dabbling in the first tutorial dungeon. Last I left off 3 years ago, so I just don't have a whole lot to say about it yet. I will get into it at some point when I want to play a Persona-like, but that hasn't happened for a bit since Metaphor, so eventually. Fire Emblem Engage took no great lessons from Three Houses' character development, storytelling, and just made the worst, most generic, dull, frustrating decisions when it comes to story, narrative, character development, and writing villains. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's worse than Fates. And Fates is notoriously awful on that front in the fan base. Engage is worse. If it wasn't for the fact that they have the best gameplay and animation in the 3D games, I think Engage would be in the bottom tier as well. The combat feels really good in Engage. It's just a shame that the protagonist is an idiot, the villain is weak sauce, and they slapped on a DLC package that is character assassination for a character that I just called an idiot. That's how bad it is. It makes Alir even worse. And Rafal is my least favorite Fire Emblem character ever. So, I really do not like much of Engage. And I actually sold it. I have no intention of playing it again. And since they didn't give us a new game plus, I absolutely am not putting myself through that entire story again to level up everyone again. It makes me sad. It makes me sad because there's some really great characters in Engage that are locked into a really crappy game on a narrative front, and are shackled to a protagonist that is trash. Marin, my sweet, sweet Marin, my favorite character, one of my favorite Fire Emblem characters ever, is stuck in that game, and I will never play her again unless she ends up in another game. Fire Emblem Warriors is kind of an interesting game in terms of its placement in the Nintendo Warriors. It followed Hyrule Warriors on the Wii U, made some smart decisions on the gameplay front, but then made some really questionable decisions on the character choice and weapon layouts. So there's really like 10 to 12 archetypes in this game. Instead of like Hyrule Warriors, every character does their own thing, and some characters have multiple weapon layouts. That was a kind of a harsh decision because it's like Chrom and Lucina are effectively the same. So like there's not really any reason to pick one over the other beyond preference. And in comparison to the depth of Hyrule Warriors, and I would say all of the Hyrule Warriors have much more depth than this game in terms of weapon layouts. I just think Warriors was a bit of a misfire, but it does have Lyn. It does have Lyn as a playable character, and she is, to this day, my favorite Warriors protagonist in any of them. She is so fun, and she's unique enough, because I think the DLC modeled a character or two after her. But she's like the original, and she's so fun. I love Lyn. Lyn's one of my favorite characters in the series. And when I unlocked her, like, things changed, and I was like, okay, well, I'm playing Lyn for the rest of time in this game, and I will be keeping it because of Lyn. So good. Sacred Stones is the follow-up to the two earlier GBA games that does its own thing. It's a little bit more of a throwback to Gaiden. It has an overworld map that you can wander around. There's monsters to fight. I just think that in terms of the character development, it's less impactful compared to Blazing Blade. So I don't have as strong of an opinion about its characters, which you kind of saw all the leftovers in Sacred Stones when I was just doing the Path of Radiance ranking. So that kind of says a lot. I do like it though, and I do want to replay it at some point. Fire Emblem Echoes got pushed out of the top 5 by Path of Radiance, which I just finished. I do like a lot about Echoes. I think that it's a really great remake of Gaiden. There are just some things that I don't care for, and it's usually related to character stuff. I think that Celica's entire plot arc is, to put it nicely, asinine. It doesn't make any sense why she surrenders so much of herself to do what she does. And there's a couple characters that I just truly despise on both sides. I think Alm's story is perfectly fine. And I do like how it changes things up quite a bit, like with the dungeon exploring and all that. I like those elements. But I do think story-wise, it's not much above Fates. And I think that the 5 that are above it have much better stories. Path of Radiance. Finally, it took me a good almost 20 years later to finally beat Path of Radiance. And I'm so glad that I was able to come back to it with save states to get rid of the one annoyance that I had, which is I hate losing units. I was able to just save state carefully and get through the game. I played it on easy this time, so I got past the chapter I got stuck on twice when I played it when I was younger. And I think it's got the best story outside of Three Houses. I think that Ike's tale is really captivating, and I think he's a wonderful character, as I was saying when we were talking about the character rankings. And it's got some really good characters in it. Its biggest problem is that Intelligent Systems had next to no 3D graphic development experience, and this was them cutting their teeth on it, and they really did cut their teeth on it because it's really rough. You've got legs on horses bending the wrong direction. All the animations for the battles just look pretty dated now. I actually turned them off just to not have to sit through unattractive animations. I'm sorry, Path of Radiance. You have a lovely art style. You just don't have a great 3D engine yet. I think that the story's really strong. The focus on trying to tackle injustice and bigotry with the Bjork and the Lagoots is really well done. I think that Ike is a really great character to serve as that avatar. He grows and develops and changes and is accepting and looks down on people who aren't, and teaches so many people that bigotry is wrong and that we are all equal. Love that message. So I really enjoy Path of Radiance. I have it under Awakening because I think that there's some elements of Awakening I like a little bit more. The music, for one. I feel like Path of Radiance's music just has a specific aesthetic to it that doesn't stick in my head very well. Like the battle theme I have in my head, but it's amazing. I hardly listen to it in this game since I didn't go into that route of having battle animations. But I don't find that particular piece memorable. I also found the antagonist Ashnard, he just kind of collapsed at the end. Like, he had all this grandiose stuff, and apparently Radiant Dawn's going to address it, but for this particular game, I felt like he just, like, I am evil, ha ha ha, oh, I'm dead! And it's like, there's nothing to it, like, no Dark Lord, no dragon coming out of the woodwork. It was just kind of flat compared to quite a few of the other games in the series. So that's why it's 5th. Awakening, on the other hand, was the Hail Mary of Intelligent Systems to see if there was any way this series was going to continue past this point. It was an anniversary game that threw back to Shadow Dragon with Lucina having a Marth disguise. I think it's a really good game still. I think the writing is still solid. There's a few characters I really don't like. But on the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of them that I do. I think that Crom is a really good avatar protagonist. I think Lucina also is. I think that the Descendant idea works really well in Awakening alone. Having your children come back in time to help you fight, I think that's a really cool idea. I like the art design on this one, which is strange because I don't really like Fates, even though it's the same artist, but I think that the design works better with how they modeled the characters and their armor decisions in this game. I think that the combat's pretty fun with the team-up system that they put in. I think it's just a really good game, and the best one of the 3DS. Fire Emblem GBA was my first experience with the series, so I've got a lot of nostalgia for it. I am going to try to replay it. Maybe not this year, since Fortune's Weave's coming out later. But in the nearish future, to revisit with save states so I don't lose a character. But I think that this really was a fantastic introduction to the series and set the ground rules really well. A wonderful beginning for North American players to engage. Lynn is my favorite in the entire series. I still think she's the best. I love her. And I think that Eliwood and Hector are also pretty good, and there's some good supporting characters that are well written. It's got a pretty decent story. The sprites are impeccably well done. Some of the best visuals on the GBA are those critical hit animations. Love them. And it's got one of the better soundtracks on the GBA too. So I think that Fire Emblem, the Blazing Blade, still has got a lot of good stuff going on for it. But compared to the Empire for me, that is the Three Houses, Three Hopes combo, I love the characters of Three Houses. I love Shez and the additions in Three Hopes. I think Three Hopes is the best Warriors Fire Emblem by a long shot. And that's really on the back of Shez. Shez is surprisingly well written. And you actually get a bit of character out of Byleth too, which I think is wonderful. Byleth is a pretty much a cipher for the most part in Three Houses, but in Three Hopes, she gets a chance to shine quite a bit more than the usual. And then the Lords get some different dynamics going on because the story is taking an alternative route. And I think it's one of the best alt universes that I've come across in a video game. I really like it. I think the combat is the most fun out of all the Warriors games, for me personally. There's enough diversity with the movesets, and all of the characters that I loved in Three Houses are back, and I can play them and mix them up on the battlefield and do different stuff with them. It's great. I love it. Soundtrack's good. I think the Black Eagles route is pretty well done. If you recruit Byleth down the road, it's not when you don't, which is kind of the case with all of them. And again, well, I forgot I re-recorded this, so ignore that again. Fuck Blue Lions. I hate Dimitri. I hate the I can fix him modality that has basically risen up around him. I'm done. I love Claude and I love Edelgard. Those are my two that I will stand for in this franchise. Dimitri can go sit in a pot of nuclear waste. Don't like him. But the cream of the crop of the series is still Fire Emblem Three Houses. I think that everything just works in this game. I love the characters, aside of Dimitri and a couple others. I love the music. I love the social dynamics that you really get to build relationships with all these characters. I love recruiting them into my house. I think Byleth makes for a solid enough avatar character. I think that the combat is good. I think that the maps are good. Maybe there's better maps and better combat in some of the other games, but I think that works quite well in Three Houses. And everything is just stirred together really well to make a wonderful time for Wildcat JF, this guy. And I like the DLC too. I think that the Ashen Wolves add a lot to it. And I do love quite a few of them too. Yuri's fine. Don't have a strong preference for Yuri. But the rest are at least B to A to S tier. So this is the one. That's the one for me. It is 4th place on my top 110 list. It won't be falling off unless Fortune's Weave just knocks me to oblivion and back, which I hope it does. All right, well, that is the Fire Emblem episode with Path of Radiance discussed, the characters added in to the ranking, and properly discussing the entire franchise that I've played up to February of 2026. I hope you found this as interesting as I do. Thank you so much, friends. You have a wonderful set of days until the next time I see you. Take care.